You are at war with yourself and likely don't realize it. Your thoughts, beliefs, habits, and actions often sabotage you. Are they helping you overcome adversity or setting you up for failure? To win this battle, you must connect with your inner warrior. We all have a warrior within us, one that strengthens our resolve and helps us to rise to meet life's challenges. If you're just surviving rather than thriving, then it's time to embrace the warrior archetype, live the warrior ethos, and ascend. If you are a veteran, first responder, or someone looking to take charge of your life, find your tribe, and then be the hero of your own story, this podcast is for you. Join Mike Kinney and Matt Hastings, two retired U.S. Army officers who served in U.S. Army Special Operations and Army Aviation units, as they share with you optimal performance practices they learned in their time with the Military and Warriors Ascent, a 501c3 nonprofit that helps veterans and warriors with PTS.
Well, all right. Welcome to the Warriors Ascent podcast with your hosts, Mike and Matt. And we have a guest. First time, you're our first guest, Anna, so you should feel honored.
I do.
As well you should. Yeah. As well you should. So, hey, just starting off, so let me ask, we talk about behaviors, thoughts, modifying our thoughts, changing our thought patterns. Matt and I have discussed on multiple episodes how it is that you go about to do that. I'll say the criticality of it, right? We've mentioned Daniel Kahneman, System 1 and System 2 thinking, cognitive behavioral therapy. But I think a lot of it is kind of like abstract, sometimes. I'll set the stage a bit. What I love about what Anna brings to the table, and she's one of our providers at the Warriors Ascent program, and I'll let you do your intro and your organization and all of that. But one of her specialties is dialectical behavior therapy, DBT, and it's very tools based. So what you're going to get today is a lot of practical application, tools and things that you can, I'll say, immediately apply to, we'll say, change and modify your thinking and behaviors. So with that said, Anna, I'm so glad you're here.
Thanks for having me. Absolutely. I didn't know that I was the first guest. That's so exciting.
You are. So I'm going to just roll through some of these slides. Anna Saviano, emotion regulation is really what we'll talk about today.
Right.
Sweet.
Okay.
And it's
our practice.
There's your practice.
Right.
We'll end it with, I think I've got your website.
Okay.
Not your website, your URL. So.
Okay.
Bam. So why don't we start with mindfulness and states of mind. So again, I'll set the stage and I'm going to shut the heck up as most as I can, which is hard. But, one of the things in terms of wise mind, that was one of the things that you taught us early on. And for me, I found it very, very useful. I tend to be more like the rational, logical, and kind of, I say completely devoid of emotion. That's not really quite true. But, and then there are others, probably like yourself. No, I'm just kidding. That are very, I'll say emotion focused, where everything is so very emotional. I like the wise mind concept in that it's kind of bringing the two together. Mm-hmm. So.
Speak to that? Sure.
Speak to that.
There's lots of ways to teach mindfulness. And in DBT, we talk about it with this Venn diagram of having, the rational side that you're talking about, and emotional side, both of which are necessary, obviously, but where they overlap is that wise mind. And that's what there's sets of skills that'll help you get into that, and then things in life that push you out, and also personality, like you tend toward one side or the other usually, but we want to teach people how to notice where they are in the extreme, and then also to get closer into that wise mind and know what pushes you one way or the other.
Right. No. So let's get your perspective anecdotally. When you heard Anna's her spiel. No, setting the stage with the.
It's kind of cool. You've been through Anna's thing a couple of times since you've worked together for years.
We've been working together for years.
I've been through it one time as a client at Warriors Ascent. So that was I think it's a 5-hour event.
I taught for 5 hours.
Yeah. It goes. Yes. This is not 5 hours. Everybody chill. But it was a lot, and it came at you fast. But I remember it being super impactful for me. And what really got me was that there's things I could do. There's hands-on application that I could take a scenario I'm in and use it to get me out of that scenario. Mm-hmm. And I was, my struggle was I was too emotional. I knew it. I wanted to be more to the rational, but that's where I could see I needed it, but I just couldn't do it.
I think what we see at Warriors Ascent and in my office and all over the place is people spending tons of time on one end and then slingshotting, overcompensating, or decompensating and going the other direction. You know, when you're at work, you're probably, for all the years that you were in service, are super rational, focused on all of that, and then come home and go way the other direction and have a hard time doing the both, which is what dialectics is about, and that's what DBT is about. So
Right.
No, that's a great point. That, say, overcompensation.
or decompensation.
And my thing was, it was kind of like playing a role, and I put on the suit, and it was kind of like this suit armor, and it would help me, you know, with all these different, everything was kind of figured out.
Sure.
And then when I came home, took that suit off, and I tried to be, you know, there's no armor and everything's getting to you, you know, and that was harder to deal with.
Yeah.
It just wasn't as prescribed. So,
So next are some of the core skills. I know there's a ton of info to cover, and we're going to speak to it very superficially, but
Sure. I mean, the mindfulness skills in DBT are the foundation. And like I said, there's lots of ways to teach mindfulness or to talk about mindfulness, but the how and what skills are what we teach at Warriors Ascent, what I teach in groups, and what is the real basis of DBT. And you want to practice first those what skills, what you're trying to do, and then how do you apply each of those. So what you do is observe, so noticing what's going on, and then put words on it, describe it, and then participating in what's happening, like in real life, not just what you want to be happening or what you think should be happening, because that's not what's actually happening. And then how you do it is the one mindfully, non-judgmentally, and effectively. So what skills you do one at a time, but you do them each of those ways each time. So when you observe, you do it one mindfully, non-judgmentally, and effectively. When you describe, you do it one mindfully, non-judgmentally, and effectively. So you're applying that each time. And it really is about getting a vantage point, getting some perspective on it is the whole point, so that you're not in everything. You can see it, and then you can decide. And we spend probably half of the time during my Monday 5 hours talking about how to get that distance, and then start to make choices about everything, not just react, or shut down.
well, I think that, you know, I'll call it the metacognitive. That may be an inaccurate, you know, characterization, I'll say, but thinking about your thinking, you know, this notion of, all right, hey, let me, like you said, be almost third party or meta, you know, above, and not be in the center of it.
Right.
But I think you use, if I'm not mistaken, the metaphor of the ocean, where up at the top, it's a storm, there's waves, it's crazy.
Sure.
You're a little bit lower, you know, or you know, at depth, and it's much calmer still. So there's still tons going on up at the top, but you're afforded the opportunity to kind of, I'll say, observe without being caught up in that maelstrom of activity and all that other stuff. So.
Which is Dan Siegel's like proper credit. I did not come up with that idea, but yeah, it is about, that's one of the things we teach is about being down there and being able to observe what's happening without getting caught up in it, without reacting, and you're just noticing. You don't even necessarily have to think about everything. Sometimes you do, but it's not just about thinking about it all. It's about noticing what's happening and then choosing. And doing it without judgment. That's probably the hardest one of those 6 skills, is to do it non-judgmentally. It's not a good or a bad or a right or a wrong necessarily, which, trying to talk to a bunch of like first responders and former military people, like that is not, doesn't necessarily land.
The non-judgmental part.
Right. And that there isn't like a right wrong about everything.
Yeah.
There's such qualitative, you know, there's qualifiers about that. And that's not always helpful.
No, I mean, that's interesting, and I think that's a really good and fair assessment. You know, in that we're kind of like in the business of judging and assessing, and you know, Matt and I, our background, military, it's the, you know, task, condition, and standard. There's a right way, there's a wrong way, there's the standard, and there's not the standard. Sure. And it's hard to just be like, well, I know Amy Schonhoff, our you know, mindfulness instructor, she says the same thing, you know, in terms of you know, being non-judgmental, just kind of taking things as they are, and
you're coming out of your skin.
That's really hard.
It's harder than it sounds, man. But
I was going through a scenario, you know, while I was still in uniform, and I was going through some CBT, and they said to me, like, what is the thing that's got you stuck? Talk to me about your trauma. And it's like, here we go. I mean, I don't have a single one. There's lots. And, it's just, I'll pick one then. So I picked one, and I explained how we almost got in this crash, and this pilot that I was training put us in a really terrible situation in the helicopter. And when I recognized what was happening, I barely had a chance to salvage it and save it. And basically I felt like some kind of divine intervention because I couldn't believe I was able to save what just happened. And that had really bugged me because I was about ready to go into these desert conditions all the time as a mainline instructor, and I'm like, damn, I almost just died and killed everybody, So it kind of threw a little trauma on me, and it made me a little more controlling, I'll say, because I wasn't going to let other people, but so, and I'm talking to an Army psychologist, and she's like, it's not your fault. You weren't the person flying. I said, but you don't understand. I was the pilot in command, and that everything's my fault. No, but you're going to have to let go of that and understand you weren't flying the aircraft, so it wasn't your fault. Like, you'll never understand. I'm in command. I cannot be in charge. It's always going to be my fault, and that's one of those things. I don't, that's a conflict I still can't really break.
I mean, I think we didn't talk about this, but DBT, the dialectics means that two things that are opposite can both be true.
Yeah.
And that maybe there's fault there, somebody's flying the plane, or maybe that's the way the chain of command works. And also, you're not a terrible person. You didn't intend it. There's like lots of other both and pieces to it. And it's not to say that there's never a right path. If you have a protocol and it's your job to follow it, but it's that moral judgment around it, or that like, what does it mean about you if you don't do it or whatever? And that's what we're trying to kind of unpack or separate out.
Another interesting thing you said when you were talking about the describe sections, you said put words on it. And what I think I remember is a huge list of different emotions. Like, instead of saying I was anxious, you're like, well, were you anxious, or were you? And then you could drill down to these words like,
or were you agitated?
Yeah, and once you can pick the actual word, it kind of changes the story in your own head. It's like, well, you're right, I wasn't.
It totally changes. I mean,
and that's pretty interesting. Can you expand on that at all? Because that was profound.
I mean, I think one of the things too that I have to remember to say is that there's also a separation between thoughts and feelings. Those are not the same thing. And that is not always a known thing when people come in. It's often not. And that how you're feeling is not a fact. It's not a fixed state. Emotions last about 90 seconds. So if you can manage to not act out on it, it'll do its thing and move on. And then you have another emotion. I mean, there's always more. But the describe piece is helpful because it also gives us some separation. So instead of even saying like, I'm anxious, you say something like, I'm experiencing anxiety, which is a very clunky sometimes feeling. But it means that like, I'm still me and I'm experiencing sadness or frustration or anger, but I'm not the anger or the sadness, which allows some of that separation too, that this is the thing that's coming through me and it'll keep going and some other thing will come through me. And
yeah, there's a separation between what it is that you're feeling or experiencing and then you as a human being.
Exactly. And same with your thoughts.
That's like the non-judgmental aspect as well. You're not like, I'm an anxious person. No, I'm just anxious now.
Right. I'm a person experiencing anxiety now. Lots of extra words. Right. But once you get the hang of thinking that way, you don't have to say all the extra words necessarily.
No, and just like anything, it's just practice, right? So you can make it the way you speak to yourself relatively quick.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I think you were touching upon, Matt, is the describe piece. And I know for guys, especially guys with our background, like, well, describe your emotions to me. And you're like, it's anger, or sadness, and with some happiness, thrown in there by and large. And I think having,
I'm fine.
Or I'm fine. I'm good. It's all good. It's all good. I'm fine. But I think having that, that lexicon, that vocabulary, the whole emotion wheel as that sounds, I think it goes a long way in helping somebody actually describe what it is that they're feeling and what it is that they're contending with. And there's a lot more nuance to it.
Well, and I'm a rules-based guy, so words mean things to me. So
Sure.
like when you say that word, it's like, well, that's a whole different thing than saying that. And so now I understand you better. So now I'm not going to be on guard. I'm going to be a little more accepting. And I appreciate when people use a correct word for something, you know.
Well, and a thoughtful word and being descriptive
Thoughtful.
about it and effortful in how you're using your words.
So expound on the participate piece. Like what does that look like, or what does that not look like? I'm on the surface, I'm thinking some that's non-participative is just, I'm not even going to go there. We're not going to talk about it.
I mean, that's that's for sure.
Versus having a productive conversation about it, which, in essence, I'll say at least lends itself to being able to describe what it is. But
Right.
but it's the willingness to have that conversation and participate, I would imagine. So.
Yes, willingness, that's a distress tolerance skill. So that's one thing we can maybe talk about. But participate is about participating in life on life's terms. So it's like not getting mad at what the reality is.
Right.
So
Right. Control the controllable.
right. And if it's not going how you think it should, still doing what needs to be done, or getting super worked up about it because I was running late this evening, and this morning. Who am I kidding?
All day long.
Yeah, it doesn't change anything, right?
But it's like I can get really fired up and then probably maybe be later, or maybe do something reckless or not pay attention and turn the wrong way or whatever. But if I'm participating, it's like, here's what time it is, and I can't do anything about that except for just keep going.
Right.
And to participate in what's happening, even if I don't like it.
Yeah.
And it's tempting to get fired up and whatever, but that's not that helpful.
Right.
And then you roll in agitated and mad, or come in and yell at your kids or whatever, because life shouldn't be happening this way. That person shouldn't have been doing it that way. That's the one. I mean, this comes up every single cohort is about
That's right. It's the
road rage
shitting,
and
the shitting all over yourself, and
right.
Yeah.
Right. No, so I've heard the term equanimity. Right. It's control what you can. Don't worry about the things, or let go of the things that you can't control. They're beyond your control.
Right.
And then have the wisdom to know the difference.
Yeah.
So that's key too. So, all right. How about, let's speak next to emotional regulation. So for those that are,
Sure.
and for those that are listening, and there's some people that just listen, versus watching. So we've got it looks like a sine wave with high amplitudes, right?
That's exactly how I would
That's how
describe
you
it.
describe it.
Yeah.
It's the engineering. No, and then what we transition to is, I'll say, lower amplitude, sine wave, really meaning, hey, you're going, between.
Way high and way low. Is that a technical term?
Well, there's that, there's either, hyper arousal or hypoarousal is what I was going for, right? And part of the DBT skill set is getting people to kind of narrow that window. And I'll leave it to you to explain the rest. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, usually when people come to the cohort or come to therapy or whatever, they're experiencing either too much high or too much low, or just too much back and forth. So it's a lot of up and down.
Right.
The emotion regulation skills are skills that you're meant to use daily, regularly, all the time, to get that wave a little bit. It's not going to be flat until you die, but it's the little bit, you're still going to have some ups and downs, but to feel like it's a little bit more manageable, and that you can know what to expect and what causes up and down also, and how to decrease the intensity of the up and down. The amplitude?
That's the amplitude.
Decrease the amplitude. There you go.
This would be frequency.
That's frequency. Amplitude
Lots
is what we're concerned with here.
Yes.
The depths of your arousal.
So,
thereof.
to me, that 5 days, if people ask me, what'd you learn out of there? This was it for me. This was like the one thing. Well, I learned a lot of things.
Sure.
But the one thing that, like, if I had to pick just the one thing that was the most important to me, was how to do this physically, and
Right.
like, cause I was having issues with that, I like how you say it in, 90 seconds, I could feel it. It's like, I got the drip of endorphin or whatever it is, and here it goes.
Right.
And I got to do something where I got to figure out how to deal with this next 90 seconds of my life here.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that's like very unglamorous about DBT is there's a million skills, which you said kind of at the beginning, and none of them work like, period. This is all a cumulative effect. They're all like tiny things. It's not going to solve your problems per se, but these are the skills that get you into the mindset to where you can actually solve problems and not make things worse and not, make things worse, internally or in your relationships or wherever. So.
Well, I mean, what's cool about all of it, whether it's CBT, System 1, System 2, whether that's that antecedent belief consequence, there's all sorts of constructs. It's all about disciplining your thought process. It's all about the ability, as you pointed out, it's not, hey, just do this thing and your life's going to be a cloudless sky. No. It's over time saying, all right, how do I address this? How do I restructure my thoughts, which I know are instrumental or absolutely critical in affecting my emotions and actions and behaviors. So it's certainly not a one and done, but just over time. In essence, it's kind of like exercising your mind, you know, such that you have, I'll say, a better thought process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, everybody knows, like, I learned quickly, don't, send an email while you're mad. Maybe you write it, but don't send it.
Right.
Read it later or all these things. But it's kind of like that, don't say anything. Don't do anything during this period until you can get this emotional regulation back to, now I'm thinking smart again. And I don't know, this was a very helpful thing for me to get to a point where I could make a rash decision or just do nothing. Sometimes that was the best thing.
Sometimes it's like sit on your hands for a couple minutes and then do some other things and then decide.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they talk about stepping in between stimulus and response is kind of what you're getting at, which is, oof, somebody does something, they trigger you, you're pissed, and you're like, oof, and it's being, it's reactive. There's another word for it that's escaping me. You can either just, react to something or respond. That's what I was going for. And response is much better. And that's stepping in between stimulus and response. Like you said, there's been a multitude of emails that I was going to send off to whomever. And I said, hey, Sergeant Major, take a look at this. And I thought it was very benign and anodyne. Yeah. And he's like, you can't send
Absolutely
that.
Not.
Absolutely not.
Yeah,
and I just knew over time, hey, wait 24 hours or get a second set of eyes on it. Mm-hmm. No, that's absolutely critical. But no, the other thing with that sine wave that, I think of is, the Stoic philosophy has come, I'll say, back into prominence. And the whole thing with that, believe it or not, I think CBT has its roots in the Stoic philosophy as well, so I'm told. But it's this notion that it's not like you're an emotionless automaton like Spock, for Star Trek fans out there. But it's like, hey, you're not giddy with glee or Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh. You're like, hey, I'm pretty moderated in the ups and downs. Just thought I'd throw that out there.
No, I mean,
probably irrelevant. Whatever, man. Yeah.
I think one of the things is when the problem being that people are in this cycle out there, and they're either not doing anything about it or they're using it. I don't know. It's like an excuse for bad behavior. It's like, well, I can't control myself.
Right.
So the only way I can do it is if I drink really hard or if I smoke a lot or if I drive really fast, whatever it is.
Right.
And instead of addressing this problem, we come up with it as an excuse. And so, like, eventually, that's what I had to do is, like, I got to figure out how to fix it,
Right.
I mean.
Which is the participate thing, right? It's like life is going to keep happening. Mm-hmm. There's going to keep being stuff that goes on. But so to be mindful and to be effective, you have to participate in what's actually happening, which is like you're part of the equation. And you're the only one who can do anything about you.
Right.
So there's
exactly.
that.
No, that's a great point, man. And reflecting on Warrior's Ascent and some of the stuff that we're talking about, one of the big epiphanies for many, aside from all the tools and all of that, is the notion that, call it neuroplasticity, call it whatever, is the ability to kind of change your thought process and thus change your behavior, as opposed to, well, this is just the way I am, or this is my personality, and I'm left to suffer that. It's like, no, you've got a lot of influence and ability to change.
Well, I mean, I've seen the grumpy vet, and they definitely. There's a genre out there that wants to be that. You got the T-shirt that says "Grumpy old vet, leave me alone." And it's like, I kind of laugh at it too. But
that works for you.
But seriously, exactly. I mean, it's really happening in our population. And what I'm trying to do here is just to say, there's nothing wrong with reaching out and getting some help. It's like you're not a bad person because these kind of things are happening to you. They're happening to a lot of people.
Right.
And there is hope, and we can get it. And we're just since offering it.
I mean, there's like infinite, I believe, I've seen infinite capacity for change at whatever, I mean, any kind of level for people to view things differently, experience things differently, feel things differently. And people come in and they're like, yeah, right. I'm like, I mean, just be willing, show up, don't totally shut down. And almost certainly something out of all of the stuff will land. You don't have to do all of them. Obviously, we teach a million things in that week. But a couple things, try one.
No, that's exactly it. I mean, if there's just one or two things that can make a change in your life, it's worth it, because it can be overwhelming. And with overwhelming in mind, we've got one last slide, that we'll have to, I think, cover very superficially.
Sure.
But,
Yeah, I mean, so DBT has a million acronyms, some better than others. ABC, please, like I said, this is the skill where we talk about every single day practicing these things.
Right.
Accumulate positives, build competence, and cope ahead. It's paying attention to the good stuff that goes on and not having it have to be like big stuff. I really like a pull-through parking spot myself. So like if I can get one, because then you don't have to back out either direction. This is one of the positives that
Win.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But it is paying attention to is that solving my life problems? No, but it's giving me just a little bit of good feeling, and that, accumulates.
I mean, it speaks to like gratitude.
Yeah. And paying attention to that.
That's powerful for
efficiency,
happiness.
pull right through.
How many times do you hear somebody say, "Oh, I'm so unlucky," and you're like,
Right.
we just ate a steak together. You don't have
exactly.
bad luck.
In the grand
Thinking
scheme
you're
of
just
things,
looking at the
man.
wrong stuff.
And,
Exactly.
and that's exactly what it is. So that's like paying attention, shift your attention to what's actually going on. So those are the ABCs. The please skills, address physical illness. This is where the acronyms get a little, because it's it's L for illness.
Right.
If you're sick, do something about it. Take care of it. Go to the doctor. Take care of your physical well-being.
That's right. Self-care is one of our big, I'll say, focus areas.
Right. But like specifically, what does that mean? Go to the doctor, drink water, eat something that isn't brown. Like these are the things that are required. Exercise does not mean you have to become like a marathon runner. It just means moving at all. Avoid mood altering substances. This includes nicotine, sugar, alcohol, weed. Pay attention to it. You don't have to avoid every single thing all the time, but pay attention and notice like what are the effects when I do or don't consume whatever
and
it is.
which way do you want to live? Like,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Sleep. Most people's sleep is garbage.
Yeah.
And that's a huge thing. I don't have time to say more about that. And then the balanced diet is, again, a way to take care of yourself. Eating things that eat the rainbow.
Eat the rainbow.
Yeah, that's a good one.
No, and so much of that is, I'll say, integral to our program. The whole eat, move, sleep, self-care, all of it. No,
Body, mind, soul.
I love
without judgment, right? That it's not like, oh, well, I have to spend an hour at the gym and do this very particular thing.
Right.
It's what can you do? What do you want to do? Spend 5 minutes, park a little further away, whatever. Like
take the stairs.
Making those little changes. It doesn't have to be a huge thing.
No, there's something to be said about the power of incremental wins. Exactly. And this notion that it doesn't have to be an hour if you make a commitment to yourself and it's
to do anything.
Something that's better than nothing. No, so I love the DBT tools, because they're, we all hear stories of some people go to therapists and it's this typical, tell me about your mother, and
I'm
it's
going to
nothing
ask that
about,
too.
Oh, yeah,
Don't get me wrong.
No, of course.
I want to know all about your
mom. No, but it's all about, hey, let me hear your story, or hey, unload, catharsis or whatever it is. And that's cool. And I'm sure that's part of the equation.
Real comfy
but to me, in terms of building capacity, personal capacity, this stuff allows you now the ability to say, all right, hey, what is it that Anna taught me about dealing or reconciling this situation? So I think that's super important. So in closing, I just want to give a shout out to Heartland Therapy Connection. So for those that are interested, for those that want more of Anna and what it is that she brings to the table, so heartlandtherapyconnection.com. And again, we've partnered with Anna in specific for years. Everybody loves her. She brings a ton to the table. She's both knowledgeable, but she's also a tough cookie. That's what I like about her. Boom.
And you also do a group for us.
I do.
That's right.
I love doing the group.
That's right. That's right.
So we meet twice a month on Mondays. I think we're kind of aiming towards the second and fourth
Right.
Monday evening, free. It's awesome.
This is a spot to grow
Love
this
it.
tribe locally
Yes.
as we want to do.
That's right. So for the Warriors Ascent community out there, if you're a graduate of the program and you're local, you can see Anna and have some group stuff going on, which I hear is very, very good.
Awesome.
So, all right, everyone, thanks so much. We'll have another episode with Anna next time. So appreciate y'all. Tune in.
Hi, Matt Hastings here, sending a thank you for watching this episode of the Warriors Ascent podcast. We strive to build a community of warriors made up of our nation's veterans and first responders. And to reach as many of those in need as possible, we need your help. Please just smash that like button and comment or share our content. Warriors Ascent is a Kansas City-based nonprofit that aids veterans and first responders with PTS. I went through this effective program and want those that are struggling to find what I found. Check us out on our website at warriorsascent.org.